guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I'm finally covering basically a video idea that I started over 9 months ago now, and this was an idea to walk between Newcastle and the coastline at Carlisle, sort of completing the coast to coast route. A lot of things just got in the way of actually completing this, so now finally 9 months later I finally got around to undertaking part 2 of this. So in the first video that I'll link up here, we walked from Tynemouth to Newcastle. This week I'm going to cover from Newcastle out towards Wylam. The original plan was to walk as far as Prudhoe and get that far out of the city, but I think I overestimated how far of a walk that is. The walk to Wylam, I believe, is something around 8.9 miles or 9 miles. So it's a considerable distance to cover in a day, especially with sort of wintertime dark nights. We'll pick up this walk from where we started, and that was just coming down Shot Factory Lane, which is adjacent to the Redhu Bridge. The first part of this path is really good. You're literally walking along sort of the quayside, adjacent to Scottswood Road. There's a lot of derelict land around here, but the area down the quayside area is quite nice. So you come along, obviously past Utility Arena, past Newcastle Heliport. What you can also see on the side here is of the Newcastle Quayside West site, which is the old Colders Lead scheme, and there's a remnant of sort of a bit of Tyneside's past here, and that is the old pigeon lofts. These are basically bordering the site of the Colders scheme. I'm not actually sure if these are actually located within the site boundary for this massive redevelopment of this part of the city, but it'll be a shame if this sort of part of Tyneside's history is lost due to the redevelopment. Further along you come to Newcastle Business Park. Newcastle Business Park was a massive regeneration project, I think completed in the 80s and 90s, which saw the former Armstrong works transformed, remediated and made into a sort of a modern office development for the time. It's sort of constructed as an out-of-town business park, so it has large parking lots surrounded by sort of 3 to 4 story buildings. Companies such as the Environment Agency, the Marine Management Organisation, all located around here, and this has a quite a pleasant landscaping scheme which sort of runs along the edge of the river. My only criticism of this part is that it's a bit narrow in places, considering this is Cycle Route 72, which is a major cycle route cross country. But the layout overall of the business park is, for an out-of-town business park, is quite nice. The sort of blocks respond to each other and creates quite a pleasant environment. So as you walk through the business park, there's a range of sort of large organisations and as well as sort of small studios. And then following this you climb away from the business park and sort of away from the river for a set period of time. And this is towards Scottswood Road. This area as you come up is almost car selling city. There's numerous car garages selling all sorts of different cars, which is what you find on cities' outskirts of city centres and outskirts of sort of built development areas, as these car garages often take up a lot of space and need to be located in places like this. Then this route follows along Scottswood Road, in which is quite a large 4-lane road. So this is probably the least pleasant part of the walk to go on throughout the whole thing. Luckily you can nip up onto the former railway line. This used to be the original Carlisle to Newcastle railway route, and which crossed the River Tyne further along, which I'll show later. But now this is a sort of multi-use cycle path, and it's obviously away from Scottswood Road. So this obviously makes it a lot more enjoyable to travel along than the busy Scottswood Road. To the north of you have the Scottswood Rise development. So this is sort of one of the major housing schemes happening in Newcastle, which is seeing the creation of a large number of homes on a site that previously was developed. I believe it used to house terrace properties, which were then knocked down in the around 60s and 70s, and then obviously replaced with housing of the time, which suffered from numerous issues. This was then decided to be whole-scale redeveloped again and replaced with sort of family housing. So you can see this site of the Rise has gone through numerous changes and numerous redevelopments over the course of quite a short span of life. Over 100 years it's been rebuilt twice. To the south, you have the Pearson Engineering and Reese Group, and this forms, I believe, when it was built, was the largest, was the longest warehousing shed in Europe. I'm not sure if it still holds this title, but this was sort of the consolidated site of the Armstrong Engineering Works, and this is placed all under one building. The former railway route then runs behind the Scottswood Bridge. This bridge was built around the 70s, I believe. And this demolished the former chain link bridge of Scottswood, which only allowed sort of single file and low volumes of traffic across. I always think it's a shame that they demolished the original Scottswood chain link bridge, as I can imagine for pedestrians and cyclists now they'd quite enjoy using this route rather than crossing the busy Scottswood Bridge. Rather than cross this bridge, we decided to continue on the north side of the river, which you now come down to what I can only describe as sort of the B&Q roundabout for the Scottswood B&Q. You can see the former Newcastle to Carlisle railway bridge, which is no longer used and sort of stands as a disused remnant. I always wondered why they never demolished this, considering it was no longer in use and it almost could pose an issue to sort of river traffic. But the reason for this, I believe, is this contains gas pipelines which are still used to sort of carry across the river. So it's basically left as an over-engineered structure for what it actually is used for. Following along from this, we come under the A1 Western Bypass Bridge, which travels around the west end of Newcastle. Off in the distance, you can see the Newburn Riverside Bridge. This is sort of more of a recent development than sort of the A1 bridge or any other bridges around here, and I believe was constructed to sort of facilitate the Newburn Riverside developments. Always a note of interest before I talk about Newburn Riverside is just underneath the A1 bridge lies a sort of abandoned boat. This boat is washed up on the mud flats of the River Tyne. I'm not sure what the backstory of this boat is and why it still remains there, but I think it's always an interesting sight to see. We then cross into Newburn Riverside, and in the distance you can see the remnants of one of the brick kilns. So I believe this area was used as sort of a major brickworks at one point, and all that remains of this now is just one brick kiln, which is that sort of, or a cylindrical pyramid. So entering in Newburn Riverside, normally the route to go is around sort of the wildlife sticking closer towards the River Tyne. But I'd looked on Google Maps before and doing a bit of research, and one of the things I wanted to see is Newburn Riverside is mainly an office and industrial unit development, but as part of this, it's now shifted towards housing. So the western edge of Newburn Riverside has now been allocated for a large number of homes within Newcastle. This is now sort of a major housing scheme for the city. One of the things that's quite interesting with planning is that access roads will often be constructed before the rest of the development obviously takes place. As you can imagine, you need a road to encourage people to develop a place. So when they construct the access roads, they built two further roundabouts that are completely intact and mostly perfect condition. However, they have nothing around it, which is quite a surreal sight. These roads are blocked off and you can't drive down them, which I'll come to what I think one of the reasons for this is later. But it's quite surreal to see these sort of brand new roads with sort of tree-lined streets that are just unused with no buildings around them. And to the sort of north and south of the site is wetland that just provides this really interesting juxtaposition between the sort of the hard engineering of the road and the sort of the wetlands of the River Tyne. But as I said, one of the reasons I reckon these roads are blocked off is you can see the remnants of several burnt out cars, so i.e. burnt rubber, smashed glass. In two sections along this road there were burnt out cars, so I believe this must have been previously to being blocked off was a place to obviously get rid of cars, which adds to the sort of weird juxtaposition of this place because obviously no one's around, there's these remnants of these burnt out cars, and then there's sort of the wildlife surrounding it. Following this, we rejoin the River Tyne, and this is adjacent to the Stella Riverside development. So this looks quite a pleasant riverside development on the south side of the River Tyne, with sort of houses, with a sort of pedestrian pathway, play areas all fronting the River Tyne, with balconies overlooking it. This was the site of the former Stella Power Station, which was located on both the north and south sides of the river. Obviously the south side has been redeveloped into housing, and obviously, as I said, the north side is likely to be redeveloped into housing too. Following along from this, Route 72 heads through sort of an industrial area. This is home to a number of factories. Of note is the Warburton's factory, and this enters into the village of Newburn. So Newburn has one bridge going across a Tyne with single lane that is traffic light controlled, and has the Route 72 cycle route running across this. So Newburn is home to sort of the rowing clubs of Newcastle, with sort of the Tyne Amateur Rowing Club and the Tyne United Rowing Club. I believe Newcastle University also have a boathouse around here, and this is where you really leave any remnants of urban land behind and really enter into the countryside surrounding Newcastle. Obviously Newburn is technically within Newcastle City Council's authority, and because you have that sort of built development along, it does almost connect into Newcastle, not entirely, but along the riverside it feels it's connected to Newcastle. So here you enter the Tyne Riverside Country Park, and as I said, this takes a turn away from sort of the urban development and outskirts we've walked through before into an overall verdant landscape. So this has a number of play areas, activity centres for children, Riverside pathway which runs along all the way to Wylam. So of interest here, this actually used to be a wagonway connecting Hexham to Newcastle, and this wagonway was actually built along one of the first roads between Hexham and Newcastle, obviously predating things such as predating the military road and the A69. This is a lovely riverside walk. Of things you really see along here, there's not much to talk about in terms of development or interesting sites, but it's just quite a pleasant landscape. And this goes on for the considerable portion of this route until you sort of enter the outskirts of Wylam, which is golf clubs, with both the Wrighton Golf Club and Close House Golf Club. One thing of interesting note along this route is George Stephenson's birthplace, which is now a National Trust property, is located along this former wagonway. So following along from here, you enter into Wylam. If you come along the Riverside route, the first thing you enter is the Tyne Riverside Country Park car park, and then this crosses the main road. So at this point, we'd been walking for a number of hours, and we decided to stop for some lunch. Went to the Black Bull Inn, which was actually really nice. Whilst we're here, the weather just turned very sour, and honestly, after walking 10 miles, you don't want to walk much further. So at this point, roughly 9 miles away from Newcastle, we decided to call it a day on this sort of second section of the coast-to-coast route. But yeah, please join us next time when I believe we'll try and cover between Wylam and Hexham, which is a sort of a similar distance, but it's quite good along this route along to Carlisle. You have the option of sort of walking this distance and then getting the Newcastle to Carlisle train back to Newcastle within around 20 minutes, which after you've just walked for 3 hours along the same route, it feels quite shocking to get back to where you want to be within 20 minutes. But yeah, tune in next time for that.